Since you're the first one here, I had some thoughts on this. I sort of like the poker card deck type font. I'm going to build on that in a second. Hello, Parker. One of the things that could always happen is you could have like the anchor point here for the sword and do a slice like that through the type, you know, and then back. And I want to show you something real quick. So you've got your layout right here, this still image you sent me. And I'm going to show you a fast way of manipulating some of this without a whole lot of work. So I'm going to add an adjustment layer for this by going Layer, New Adjustment Layer. And an adjustment layer is sort of like in After Effects, in Photoshop, where you can put effects and things inside of it, and it affects every layer below it. So I'm going to show you this transform effect. And what the transform effect does is you've got your triangle, you've got your 4 pillars of motion up in here. You got your position, scale, rotation, and transparency. And I'll show you position. Look, see, everything's moving. Here's the beauty of it. We can apply a mask, so only part of the image is affected by this transform effect on the adjustment layer. And remember, if you want to mask something, it's like making a layer mask in Photoshop, but you can animate it. You can do tons of cool things. So the first rule of thumb is always make sure the layer is selected. And then if you draw a shape or use a shape tool, you're creating a mask. Good evening, Isabella. You're going to create a mask instead of a shape. So I've got my adjustment layer selected, and I'm going to just make a quick mask. So now, watch what's going to happen. Only what's inside this mask is going to be affected by the transform. So I showed you that quick sword slice, and I'm going to keyframe animate the word sword. So I'm going to click position in my transform effect, go forward a little bit, and just move it a bit. And if this mask is getting in the way of you seeing, you can just click right here to hide it. So this way you can see how far you're moving things. And I'm going to select both these keyframe assistant. I right-clicked, easy ease them, go into my speed graph, and I want this to slow into that last one. So I'm going to use my selection arrow tool. I clicked on the last keyframe, and I'm just going to drag very slowly. And remember, if your keyframes are not selected, you're not going to see anything. So you could always click the word to show all your keyframes. So let's see what that's going to look like. We'll pretend the sword just cut through it. And like that. So you could always make it more severe or whatever, but that's just a quick thought when I saw this with the sword there. You can even move a little bit more if you want. Let's see if we could rotate it a little, what that would look like. Or skew it. Nah. I'm not going to skew that. Let's try rotate. Yeah, wait, so we could have it slide and then very subtly rotate a tiny bit. I'm going to hit the U key so I can see those. Have it tilt back a little bit. See, there was some rotation there at the beginning by accident. That's just a little thing I was, good evening, Christian. And if it's looking a little weird, you could always duplicate your mask, like copy it by selecting it, and then going to here and pasting it. Let's see. Let me hit the M key to pull that up. Or let's say if we don't want the text to, actually let's say that's a bit severe. Let's get rid of the rotation. So I'll click off the stopwatch and I'll have it move a little less, just because that's a bit too drastic. There we go. Like such. Hello, Julia. Yeah, that would work. Other things that could work would be you could have cracks in it. It's really up to you. But I just wanted to show you that quick concept and, just play around with it somewhat. And then maybe the drip could come off the blade to start making this type. And you could use trim paths with that. That would be like nothing selected. You'd have your shape, and then you'd add your trim path to it. Let me hide the layer below, just so you can see what's going to happen. I'm going to get rid of my fill by clicking the word fill. I'm going to add a stroke by clicking on the word stroke. You know what? So I need to delete that. Start over. So we'll pretend this is where the blade is. Okay, so there's the first line. And then I'll start a second line like that. Okay, and I'll just work with the width and all that I've got. So I'm just going to do trim paths. And it would be the end because I'm coming from the start point down to the end. So you would just animate that over time from, like such. And once it gets to about that point, I can start having this come out. Remember, that's part of your animation hierarchy, is making sure things make sense how they're coming in and out of. Because if this came in too early, it's not connected to anything, so it really wouldn't make much sense at all. And that would be the end point again, because it's the last point I drew. Right there is where it's going to start. And let's go there. So, you just time it. And there are things you could do to make it look more liquid-like. And we'll dive into that later. It's all about the timing and maybe having splats come off to make, the letters appear. That's a good way of going from letter to letter. Okay, so there's something I wanted to dive in, and then I'm going to go into Isabella's next. Let me hit no. All right. I'm going to make a simple shape because that's the fastest way to learn. I'll get rid of the stroke on it. And let's just make it yellow, why don't we? Okay. So, I said before, let me make that a little wider, a little taller. All right. If nothing's selected and we add another shape, we get a second layer. And there will be times you want that as a separate layer, and there's times you don't. And I'm going to go into one of the instances where you wouldn't want that. So I'm going to put my anchor point in the middle. And the way I did that was I held down Command or Control and I double clicked on the pan behind tool. That will automatically snap it to the center. Now, I'm going to draw my second shape. And so here it is right inside here. I've got two shapes. With the layer still selected, I'm going to click Add Merge Paths. I'm going to open that up. And let's try... Wait a sec, let's delete that. Let's just click on the shape first, the actual shape layer, and try it here. Now we'll see if it works the way I want it to. Sometimes it's the order of where you put things in. So that's what the intersect did. There's exclude intersect. Okay, so I put the merge in the actual shape itself, not in one of the shape layers inside it. And the neat thing about this is sort of like the the Pathfinder in Illustrator, but don't forget we're in After Effects, and I can go forward a little bit, click on size. I turned off the uniform scale, and I can have the eye go up a little bit. Let's have that quick. That's an example of anticipation, going in the opposite direction of your primary motion you're going to do. Then I'll have it go down a bit, and then I'll have it go back up to the original, and then that little bit of overshoot we had, and then I'm going to copy that original again, like such, and I'll ease those. Let's change that render area, and there you go. That's one layer, and the eyes are inside it, and that's going to help keep this consistent. And if I select this and I hit Command D to duplicate, there's the path, there's the keyframes. So all I gotta do is just reposition it, and I can do that this way. And look, you can get other interesting things happening that way. So there you go. I just wanted to show you that the merge paths, you need more than one shape inside the same shape layer, and you select that shape layer that everything's in, go add merge paths, and then you can have this happening quick and easy. So I'm just showing you some of the possibilities with shape layers in After Effects. And there's one more thing I'm going to show you. Let me go make a new comp. Okay. I'm going to get rid of the fill. Give it a solid stroke. Okay, so I showed you before, if we twirl down the contents, you can animate the path. I'm going to click here to turn it on, and I'll grab my selection arrow. I just held down Shift just to get a point. You can change the path point or the Bezier curves. Both will work, and the shape will change over time. That's one way of animating a path. I'm going to click off the stopwatch to get rid of those keyframes. Another way you can animate a path is by clicking on the word path, go up to Window, create Nulls from Paths, and you get three options. And I'm going to have points follow nulls. What that means is each point will have a null attached to it. Nulls are invisible shapes. I'm showing you this so that you can see the next thing I'm going to teach you. So what this means is this null, if I change its position over time, the path point is going to move with it. Okay, so it's just like I did earlier, but it gets a little bit more interesting than that. Whereas, let me select all these, delete it. Let's pretend that this is a cartoon character's arm. Okay. And I'm going to give it round caps and a round join just to make it look more cartoony. And you'll see this in a second. So that's under stroke. Okay, so here's my cartoon arm, and there's going to be a hand at the end of it. This is the power of using what I just taught you, and I'll show you why. So I click on the word path, I go Window, Create Nulls from Paths, and I want the path, the points to follow the nulls. So where every path point there is, there's a null for it. And this is the tip. I'll call this hand, so I know what's what. And then this one would be the elbow. And then that's the shoulder. I was just hitting enter to name them. Okay, so the hand, if I go position, I can move the arm up and down. It looks like the hand's moving. Okay, fine. That's pretty interesting. But here's where you get into saving yourself a lot of time. Nothing select, I'm drawing a new shape. And I'm just going to rough this out real quick. Like that. We'll pretend this is the hand. I'm going to parent this hand that I drew to the hand null. And to parent something, you could use your pick whip over here and drag like such, or you could use the drop down. The parent option is in both the switches as well as the modes. So what that means is whenever this null moves, that hand's going to go with it. So now when I move that null, the hand goes with it, which is very useful. But I'm going to hold down Shift and hit the letter R, so I've got the position and the rotation. If I rotate that null, now I can rotate the hand as well as move the position, and it's keeping everything together. So that's one of the benefits of learning this technique for animating shape paths, because you can tie your nulls there, and with your nulls, you can attach other objects and get more complex animations. Because that's what this is all about, is getting the highest quality animations you can in this class. So I'm going to go over parenting one more time before showing you the next bit on this. Okay, so there's always a parent-child relationship. And what that means, which I'll show you, I'm going to parent the child to the parent. So I'm going to grab my pick whip and drag over to there. What that means is anything that happens to the parent happens to the child as well. The parent is the driving force, and the child does whatever the parent does. Except for transparency. But there's ways around that. I'll show you later on in the course. So the child follows along with the parent. All transformations that happen to the parent are going to happen to the child as well. Okay? And that's just, you take the child layer, pick whip it to whatever the parent layer is. It's a very simple way of keeping your animation together, as well as doing more complex animations. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, so when I saw Isabella's train, it made me think of an old-fashioned steam train. And what I did was I drew this shape, and these all have an anchor point at the center. So I've got one circle that is parented to this other circle, and you can see my child-parent relationship here. And what I did was this final shape I've got, I drew this straight line. And that straight line, I went to the path and I created nulls for it. And I parented those nulls to these circles. So what's going to happen is when the wheel rotates, everything's going to move with it and look like it's really rotating. And the tie rod here that's keeping everything together will rotate with the wheel and keep a consistent volume about itself. So that's the first thing I did. And then the second thing I did was I created the quote-unquote train shape above, which is right here. And the wheel that everything is parented to, I parented the rotation. So I open up the rotation, I grab the pick whip under rotation, and I drag it up to the position of this first shape. So when I change the position of the first shape, that makes the wheels rotate, and they stop when the position stops, just like a real train. So I'm gonna move this off the screen a little bit and show you what's gonna happen. So I'm gonna click position, I'll go forward, and then we'll just move it here. And now I'm going to easy ease these by right clicking, easy ease. Go into my speed graph and have it slow into that last one. Go out of my speed graph, and now let's watch what happens with those wheels and the ties. It should gradually come to a stop. See that? That's all off of 2 keyframes and parenting. The wheels only move when there's position happening because I parented the rotation to the position, and the faster it's moving, the faster it's rotating, just like in real life. When you think out your animations, you can get some pretty interesting results simply. The ties in the wheel, I just used a star and I edited the radius, the inner and outer radius, just like that, and that's how I came across that. And it's just something I wanted to show you while we were talking about parenting and, you know, using that null so that each endpoint of this rod stays at a consistent distance the way it would in real life. It's just some things to consider. Now we're going to look at Isabella's train in a second. One of the art layers was missing, so we'll just watch it this way anyway. Okay, so here you can see she's got a more modern train, and it's just moving straight across. Like that, there's no vibration or anything like that, and there's nothing really moving. So that's why I was showing you that wheel idea to dress that up. Let's take a look at your train. Yeah, see, it's 2 keyframes, linear motion, no speed graph. But let's try and push this. So if I go to position and I right click on that and I choose separate dimensions, you've now got an X and a Y, side to side and up and down. I'm going to get rid of the Y. Oops. And you see there it's going side to side the way it was. Now, in week 3, my typeface, that's fine, don't worry about it. In week 3, we cover expressions in the lecture. And just a quick refresher on that, if you hold down Alt or Option when you click on a stopwatch, that brings up the expression field. And the most common one everyone learns first is wiggle. I'm going to double click in here to complete that. The first number, let's try 2 times a second at, let's do 15. So I'm going to zoom in so you can see what's happening here. So I started typing the word wiggle, it auto-completed with these parentheses. So you add a number. The first number is the number of times per second. So I chose 2. Then you do a comma and you add a second number. I did 15. That's the amount. What this means is this is randomly going to move up and down because I put it only on the Y. It'll randomly jiggle up and down twice a second, an amount of about 15. So I guess that'd be like 15 pixels or so. And let's see what that does to the motion of the train. See, now it's going up and down a little bit. And we could change that. I could say I want to see more of that. So I'll go 9 and let's drop this down to 8. So it's jiggling up and down more, but more times per second. But there we go. See now how it looks like it's more on a track rocking up and down. Let's try 15. Drop that down to 5. See what I mean? That's the difference. These subtle little changes are what's going to make your motion stand out and be a little bit more sophisticated. And that's what lab time's all about. It's pushing it little by little. See the difference? And if you say, well, that's going a little bit too high, let's drop it down to 3 and try it again. And I just hit the spacebar. See what I mean? The number of times per second and the amount of the change. So I just right clicked and separated the dimensions and threw the expression on there to get that. Now, let's look at your resting logo that we've got here. This is in like the bottom half of the screen. This is up at the top third, top left third. And there's a little bit of competition going on. It could use some more balance. And you've got all this empty space over here. So try and figure out a way that this can resolve itself a little bit better. Like if you look, this shape is circular, this is circular. Maybe this motivates that, like the planet comes out of it. Let's move the head. Okay, now there's already keyframes here. Right there. So what I can do is, and that comes down. Okay, they're just going straight up and down. So I'm going to show you a shortcut here. I'm going to click the word position for face to get both keyframes that you've got. And I'm using my previous and next to make sure I'm smack dab on one of those keyframes. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide this over on the X. And what that's doing, it's moving it on the X on both of these. It's still moving straight up and down. I just slid it over because I'm on one of the keyframes. So I'll put it to about here. And let's move it up a little just for the fun of it. Oh, wait, nope. I'm going to have the second keyframe. Let's see. So that's coming up that way. All right. So I'm going to move that up a little bit more. And okay, so that comes in over there. So I'm going to click the word position to get both the keyframes. Make sure I'm directly over one of those keyframes. Slide it over to where it needs to be. And now I'm just going to line this up a little better. Okay, so what if something happened, like instead of this like coming from up and down and all that stuff happening, let's hide this galaxy in the background. What if something else motivated this, like a light, like the lights, these surfaces in the clock glow and that spreads and reveals the rest of this shape, and you could do like a shine effect to reveal the lower half of the head, and possibly the globe comes out. I mean, the planet's all up to you, but you want to make sure that there's motivation for each part of this. And it's like, you've got this clock. It would be great if these hands were spinning around on it. Think of these things. And could we make this head look like it's laughing or something like that? I'm just getting experimental here. Let me just see if we can push this. So there's the head. It's done moving. All right, like that. Let's say we want to start here. I'm going to try a technique called puppet pinning. You're going to learn it later on. But puppet pinning is one way of moving shapes. Let me hide the clock so it's not going to be in the way. So with puppet pinning, it's not just pinning down what you want to move, it's pinning down what you do not want to move. So what that means is I've pinned my stuff down. If I go forward a little bit and I drag this down now, let me undo. I'll select multiple ones. I'll drag them down a little. Hit U. Let's copy this keyframe. Oh, wait. Gotta copy all those. And wherever you have the playhead is where you're going to paste that keyframe. And let's create a quick loop. So I'll get the down point. And then let's ease those and see what that looks like. Let's turn the globe back on, or the planet, clock, whatever it is. And if you change where those points are, you can get something more refined, but we get a little bit of motion to the face, cheating that with these puppet pins. So clearly, if we pin down a little bit more, see if that helps it. You see now it's looking a little better because it's pinned down the top a little bit more. But I'm just showing you some options here with that. I hope that helps. Just rethink your layout. It'd be great to see the clock moving, you know, just try and figure out your little details here and there. You know, if you are going to use this train, adding that expression helps. Let's see what happens if we throw some motion blur on that train because it's too crisp. There's your train. Here's your switches. Remember, if you're in your modes, just click switches and modes. And motion blur is right here. That automatically enabled it. And we only have motion blur on that one layer. Any other layers you want motion blur, just click that switch to enable it. See how that looks better already? You got some motion blur to it. And it's adding a little bit more sense of speed and depth to the shot as well. And what if, after the train goes by, instead of the clock dropping down, it comes up out of the head? That would make a little bit more sense, just in my opinion. It'd help unify and keep the viewer's eye here because that's coming down and you just want to keep the person's attention to where the logo is. So, you know, it's coming along nicely. Yeah, no problem at all. Again, motion blur right there. Looks like the basketball, the bouncing ball right there. All right, so I did a little bit of Peter's and Isabella's. Does anyone else have anything they want me to take a look at? And in the meantime, while I'm waiting to hear back from everyone, I'm going to grab that clock and let's cue all these keyframes. Let's see what it looks like if it comes up from behind person. Oops. Let's scale to fit first. Make our job a little bit easier as designers. And we can mask it so it's nice and clean. And I'll show you the fast way of doing that here. So I think it'd look pretty neat if once the train is halfway across his face, we'll have it come fully up before the train leaves his face. That train goes off. Okay, so clearly I've got to go down a little bit. And now I can just copy this keyframe onto that one and delete the original. That didn't work, so we go down a little. Let's go down a little bit more. There we go. Now, let me show you that fast, easy cheat for keeping the masking behind the head. We used alpha mats before, and what that is use any shape, the alpha and the negative space, and that'll be used to reveal or hide something. So I'm going to, wait a second. So I've got to even move that down a little bit more. Where's that? That's the planet. No, it's the clock. Because that's peeking through and I don't want that. Okay, that's forgivable, just because I'm mocking this up real quick. All right, so I'm going to use this head to mask out that. So I'm going to duplicate this one more time, the face, and the duplicate's on top, and the other shape is above the clock. So I'm going to go to my clock layer, go to my modes, and let's hide that train just so we can see what's going on here. Right here, okay. I want to mask out that stuff on the side. So let's try an alpha mat. Right away, what's inside this shape will be shown. What's outside of it is masked out. So I need to add the top part next. So let's try deselect. I'm going to add a square right there, and let me give it a fill. 1 second. Alpha mats have to be one layer revealing one layer. And what I'm going to do here, which I'll show you in a second, is I'm taking two shapes. I'm taking this square and the face. I select them both, right click, pre-compose. I'm going to call it matte, put all my attributes inside. And now let's see what happens with that. Let's go back to none. Set this back to alpha matte. Now, since we added that shape to the top, you can see the clock reveal out, and then when I go backwards, it's keeping whatever goes outside the jawline hidden. Now it's working the way we want it to. See how much we pushed that with just a couple changes to the layout and the motion? It's starting to keep the eye right here rather than going all over the screen, making it a little bit easier for the next part to be revealed. Just a couple little tips and some minor tweaks to help push us along. That's what it's all about. First, think of your logo. Motion design is graphic design plus time and space. So have a good, clean layout for your logo, then use your animation hierarchy. What's coming in? When's it coming in? Does it make sense? This makes sense because the bottom half is already there and it's pushing up out of the bottom half. And that's why that works. And the train bisects through that. And not that, but adding that motion blur helps separate it from this. So just showing you that. And you can figure out what you're going to do with the planet. How that can come in. Maybe it rises up from behind the train, you know, sort of like the clock did. Unsure. I mean, it's plenty of options. Yeah, no problem at all. Now remember, alpha mats are always one layer revealing one layer. Since I needed 2 layers to get this, I pre-composed them together into one layer. And it's that one layer on top revealing the one below it. Reading Julia's next. Yes, okay, all right. I'm glad you said that. Now, this can be an alpha mat reveal as well. Like we were just talking about alpha mats, they can be animated. And I like how you're paying attention to the swishing of the brush. So let's look at that. Okay, you got a couple of options. All right, we'll use this just because, you know, it's checking off enough of the boxes. So save image. And I like this because it gets to show, what was I doing? Oh, yeah, the paintbrush. Okay, paintbrush, downloads, no, it's desktop. You could go File, Import File, or just double click inside here to get the image. All right, now let's do some learning. Rotate. Okay. Of course, then that looks like the thing. Now, over here, I want to show you something. Depending upon the look and feel you want, we'll pretend this is the brush, okay? I'll go to a different color just so it's visible. Okay, so, like I said before, lab is all about trying new things and different techniques. So we've got a rough brush. And what we learned earlier is you can parent objects together. So this will be my child, this is the parent. Here's my brush head. I'm going to grab the pick whip and drag it over to the handle, or I could do the drop down menu, whatever works for you. What this means is whenever I move the brush handle, the brush head goes with it. Same with rotation, okay? So we're firing on all cylinders. Now, let's take a look at that brush head. So I'm going to go position, drag, and move it. And there's your motion, okay? But it doesn't look like it's dragging because of the brush head. So let's see if we can animate the path while it's being parented to the brush handle. So that will, of course, be the path stopwatch. I clicked and I turned that on. And now I'm going to move a couple of these points because how I want it to look there. And let's say right about here, it's going to drag a little bit, have some weight to it. That's subtle. So right here, there's one way that you can give it a little bit of weight, like I said, animating the path, to make it look like there's friction. And this is parented to the brush handle, so they stay together. That's the first thing you can do if you're doing it vector. Oh, and you know what? Since I started this, let's go the whole 9 yards. I'm going to deselect. Let's see your motion trail. Oh, here's right here. All right. There's our shape. We'll pretend this is perfect. We'll put it below everything. Like such. And we can have it follow along. Let's that we can do. Let's try, just for the fun of it, let's try a linear wipe, see if that works. We'll throw a linear wipe on that reveal shape. It's going the opposite direction I want. So I'm going to change it from positive 90 to negative 90. Now it's going in the direction we want. So I'm going to click here. Keep filling it in as it moves. But I do not want it to go past the brush head. Let me go to that path because it's off a little bit, just because I blindly eyeballed it. Bring that down. And then if there's any gaps where it's off, like right here, I can fix it up like such. And let's change the color just to make it a little bit easier to see. There's that little bit where we'll go one frame, hit U, it's my keyframes. There we go. All right, so you got that. And the fast, lazy, easy way just to save everybody time. I'll just grab this font. And I'll match the angle of the stroke. Move it down there. And put it below everything. Since it's the color of the background, you won't see it until that shape is behind it. Ta-da! Perfect crime. Like such. So this is with shapes and a fun, playful color palette. You know what? Let's push this before we go into the other one, because that's what lab time is all about. I'm going to put rough edges on it, because it is a path that we drew. And remember, you could always click here, so you don't have that distracting box running around it. It's really just sliding around until you get the look you want. There it looks a little bit more paint-like. The larger I make the scale, the more blotchy it's going to look. And the smaller I make it, the more dithery, fine dot look it's going to be. Like such. That is with shapes. And remember, you could put in gradients and textures and things like that. Try and get the look you want. Now, we're going to do the same thing, but photorealistic. So I'm going to go from here. Go to there. There's our distance. Now, we did puppet pinning. Puppet pinning works really well sometimes with photos because it keeps the texture and distorts it a little bit like it would in real life. So let's try puppet pinning and see what happens. Remember, it's not just pinning what you want to move, it's pinning what you do not want to move. So I'm going to go forward a little bit, drag this behind a little. Give it a little bit more drag there. And let's easy ease all those. Right click, easy ease. And let's see what that looks like. And you can see the brush hairs moving along with it. And I think I may have just crashed. Oh, there we go, okay. See, just like that. So you're doing the same thing. It's just, you know, how do you want it to look? That's what it's all about as the designer. And then I would just change the keyframes here to match the new motion. I just don't want to go past the brush head. And then in the reveal, I would have to go back and fix up that shape. path. Making sure it's not thicker than the brush width. And then just remember your layer stack. Like such. So I'll send all these files out to the class just so you have them. I'll include the brush photo as well that I downloaded. Again, think about your idea. Have your resting logo, and then think about the style you want. This is the exact same thing done two completely different ways. Super neon bright, geometric shapes, cartoony, a little more photorealistic. That means this would need to look more photorealistic as well. Maybe using an actual paint smear with the linear wipe effect. It's all up to you. The effect works on anything. I use the linear wipe on the shape that I put the roughen edges on. You do the same thing over a photograph. It's all up to you as the designer. All right, and I'm going to wait to see if there's any more questions on anything. And I'm just going to recap real quick. What we did new tonight, you learned if you want to keep a shape layer inside another shape layer, you keep the layer selected when you draw. And then you could do merge paths to create some complex animations. Just make sure you've got the layer selected, not one of the shapes inside, the shape layer. Go add merge paths. And then you could experiment with the drop down here. It's just like the Pathfinder in Illustrator. Like such. And you could animate the shapes like we did with that one to make it look like it was blinking. The other thing we covered was, let me delete that, using nulls with paths. Let me get rid of the fill on that. Make it a stroke. Should have had it selected first, that's my bad. Such. And to get that to work, you have to have the path selected right here, the word path. You go window, create nulls from paths. Now I showed you points follow nulls. That means the path points move when the null moves. The opposite of that, nulls follow path points. That's if you want to do the exact opposite. But then there's also trace path. And what that's going to do is animate the null along your path point. So say you've got like a roller coaster and the cart following it, or a train. You can have your artwork parented to that null and move along the path. That's just another little fun thing. And when we did points follow nulls, I drew a hand and parented that hand to the null so that when you rotate the null, the hand moved with it. And then we did a little bit of expressions. So think about what you want to do. I'll do the wiggle expression again. This time I'll put it on the scale. Same expression, it just changes what you're animating. So you'll hold down Alt or Option, click on the stopwatch you want to animate. And let's do 3 times a second at 359 for the amount. I'll hit the space bar. And there you go, you get a bunch of random scaling motion. If I put that on the transparency, it'd be flickering. If I put on the position, it'd be bouncing all over the screen. Same expression, it just changes when you enter it into a different stopwatch. It's all up to you as the designer. I'm going to copy from here. The line breaks are important. My line breaks did not hold up. Let me turn off that. See if I can just put this in and what happens. Yep, there we go. So, saves you some keyframing. Expressions are pretty useful. Again, if the line breaks aren't working, just look up the name of the expression and then, Google it and copy and paste it in and you'll be good. Okay, so if there's no further questions, we can wrap up a little early if you want tonight. If anyone added anything new, let me know. You see over time the expression stops itself. Thank you so much for all the help with mine. I believe you mentioned particle space. Yes, I did mention particles. Let's take a look at that real fast. All right, so I'm going to do a new solid. And let's see, particle world, will that be the one? Yep, this is the 3D one. Now I'm going to add in a camera. I think that's where I went wrong last week. I didn't have a camera. So here's my camera. Okay, so let's take a look at this. This is the first step. See if I get this working this week. Alright, that part's not working. I'll keep at it though. Sometimes they run updates and it just messes everything up more than you could imagine. I'm just trying to get something I can work with, and then I'm going to explain what I did once I've got it working. Okay, so first thing I did was I changed the physics to cone axis and I increased the resistance. that's going to affect how strong the particle engine is. So it's basically not moving. I then drop down the velocity because I don't want these moving, like I was saying. And I just changed my particle type to a shaded sphere to look more like a star. Now, when you're adding in your particles, I'm going to go to Opacity Map. The default is it fades on and fades off. You see, once you go into the graph, you get a pen option. I'm just going to paint that. So now they're not fading on, they're not fading off. I gave them less of a birth rate, meaning less of them are being born, and I'm having them live a lot longer so that they stay where I want them to. I turn the gravity off so that they're not moving up or down. And since these are stars, I'm going to want a really big color map here. And I went custom, and now I can pick star-like colors. And you can see the stars are different colors based upon how long they've been on the scene. So you just pick the colors that you wanted. Birth size, death size, that's how big they are. We'll give them all maximum opacity, like that. And now that we've got a rough star field laid out, I'm going to use my camera and go to my camera options, and you can zoom in and out here. Let's see what happens if I go to Cinema 4D. There we go. Now that's working. I bet you that's what was preventing the particle system from rotating, was this classic and cinema option. So if I animate a zoom in, we're now flying through space. And random seed will just give you different particle layouts. I like this one. Okay, so roughly we've got the stars where we want them. And you see that you can move however you want with the camera. Like, you just use the camera tools up here, orbit, like such. Pan, meaning going side to side, or tilt up and down. Just make sure you click on the right stopwatches before you go animating the camera. And let's say we go here, and then I'm going to just click every stopwatch, move here, and let's try an orbit. Such, so you can see the keyframes that got affected are right there. And just zoom. like such. So now I got a little something interesting going on, showing its three-dimensional space. And you would not have had that with your, flat image. Remember, I clicked on Cinema 4D here just to help ease this along. And speaking of which, when you're working with cameras, you want to have as few keyframes as possible. And easing this will really help give you smoother motion. Another thing I did was I lowered my preview resolution right here. The higher your resolution, the slower it's going to take for you to render your animation. So I work at a low res so I can see the motion faster, and then I fine tune how the image looks once I'm done with all that. Now I'm going to show you about the gas field in outer space. In week 9, I've got a cloud. I've already added up there for everybody. I'm just going to download that. So I'm going to go File, Import File to bring in that cloud. Okay, now when you're using custom particles, like these are shaded sphere, it's a default particle. And I'm going to show you how to create your own custom particle. So clicking New Composition. When you're doing a new particle, you want it to be like 200 by 200 or 300 by 300. You do not want it to be too big. It'll slow down the render engine. So I'll do 200 by 200, and I'll do 300 by 300. And I throw my cloud into this, and I got to scale down. You want to make sure it fits in. It's inside. That's good. If it goes past, you'll get a hard edge, and you can animate this, put effects on it, whatever you want. It does not have to be a still image. I'm using a still image because the gas in outer space isn't really moving. Okay, so I'm going to grab that custom particle I put in the new sequence, drag it in here, and hide it. I'm going to duplicate this particle layer by hitting Control D or Command D, and just go to my particle right here. Instead of shaded sphere, I'm going to choose texture faded disk. And here's why. If I do textured square, there's going to be a square particle placeholder with hard edges. I'm doing faded so that there's a smooth, soft blend from particle to particle and you won't see lines. So I'm doing texture faded disk. Now I've got to say, what's the texture inside that faded disk? I twirl down here and I choose my layer, the cloud pre-comp I made. You always want it to be a pre-comp, and you want it to be, like I said, 200 by 200 or 300 by 300. Do not put scatter on it, because that'll change where it is inside that placeholder. You don't want to do that. Now I'm going to crank up the birth size and the death size. And I'm also going to increase the amount of them. Now, we've got this happening. And the fast fix for that, the opacity map's already there. We can colorize it any way we want with our custom color map. Let me volume shade that. Let's do this. Okay, so maximum opacity. With smoke, the higher the opacity, the thicker it's going to be, like from a fire. But if you just want fog or gas, lower the opacity, and look where we're at already. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread out this inside the producer. Let me make this a lot bigger. Spread that out a little. such. And let's go to our custom color map. Here it is. And we can change the colors of this to make it look more outer space gas-like. I lowered the volume shader because the gas would be thin and it really wouldn't be creating shadow like that in outer space. So that's looking all right. Let's try increase the longevity a little bit. And you could always slide the particle system down a bit so that it's more visible earlier on. There's more of them born, and I'm just going to drag out the other end. Save. So I'll call this one particle stars, and I'll call this one particle gas. Do a quick little fly through like that. And I could always even lower the opacity of this layer a little if I want, if it's a little much, like such. And I could also lower the maximum opacity in here. I'll drop that down to 3. Much better at a low number. And just because it's all about pushing your idea, let's throw some glow. See what happens if I throw some glow on those stars. I'll hold down Alt or Option while I'm clicking on the bits per channel in the project panel. Now we're starting to get some of that. And let's adjust that threshold a little bit. Increase the radius. There we go. And I'll increase, let me slide to right about, let's try here, just for the fun of it. I'm gonna hit save, and then I'm gonna go to full resolution. It'll take a little while to render that frame, but you'll see the difference in quality between, low res and then going back to your full resolution to preview. So like I said, get your motion, get your layout, then look at it at a higher resolution. And there you go. There's some gas and some stars in outer space with the camera moving throughout it. And you can see how you get this bit of depth and dimension as the gas is building up, if that's what you want. And it's just so much more engaging than a flat picture of space, because space has depth to it, Drop down my resolution and hit save, and I'll mail out all these files. Any other questions? And I do have the full lectures up for the entire semester. I gave you the links to them, and I fully go into particles, and I show you some pretty interesting things you can do with them. So I definitely suggest tackling particles at some point in the semester, because you can get some pretty fun and interesting things with them. And it saves you time too in the long run, because I won't want to have to draw out all these stars or colorize them. The particles did it for me. I'm going to see what happens if I drop this back down to classic. What's going to happen? See, it's still working. It's working pretty fine. So maybe it's just a temporary glitch, but it should probably go a lot faster at the classic 3D render than going for that high quality Cinema 4D, because we're not doing any 3D meshes or anything like that. This is just strictly particles. Yeah, see, this is looking pretty good. I like the way that looks. And look how much faster it's rendering. Yeah, classic 3D was the way to go. I don't know what the hiccup in it was, but it's working now. As you can see, it's a lot faster. All right, well, I guess that'll be it for this evening. Stay in touch, send me your files, keep working on it little by little by little. I'm telling you, time management is everything. Don't let these projects get out of hand. Don't sleep on it. Do a little bit each week, and I know you'll turn in something that'll help you get a job once you're ready to be in the market. So I hope everyone has a great week. And if you have any questions or concerns, just email me and let me know. Thanks, and have a good rest of your evening.